Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Wheelhouse with Kate and Joel. Joel is not with me though. I am flying solo today. He is out riding his bike or something. Now with the Wollongong World Championships diving toward us, we're not far out now. We have the absolute pleasure of having Cadel Evans in the house. He's coming to the Wheelhouse bunker to have a bit of a chat. Now, of course, Cadel Evans is Australia's only winner of the Tour de France. He's also the only Australian winner of the coveted rainbow jersey that you get for being world champion on the road. He's also an ambassador for the event. Not too far away. Cadel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Absolute pleasure to have you. How are you?
Oh, very well, thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me today, and thanks for having me on along today. And yes, we're coming up to the Worlds. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, I believe you are at home now in Switzerland, but you'll be getting on a plane to head down under soon.
Absolutely, yep. Just last couple of days here, home away from home. I'm still based in Europe for this since I've stopped racing. But no, I'm on the plane in 2 or 3 days. So looking forward to coming out to Australia, of course, because I haven't been out since May, and of course don't get to travel as much as we used to. So I'm missing being in Australia just for that. But of course, for international cycling to come back to Australia and for all the races to start again, I'm really looking forward to that. And I think the Worlds in Wollongong is going to be, I'm guessing, going to be very, very well accepted and welcomed by all fans of cycling and sport in Australia.
Yeah, I think you are spot on about that. Now, before we dive into your World Championship win, Cadel, the last one that was in Australia in 2010 in Geelong, that was a home World Championship for you, not just by country, but of course, Geelong being very familiar to you, the streets which you spent so many years of your life. What's it like for an Aussie with the national jersey on, racing at a home World Championships?
Well, I think everyone takes it a little bit differently. I was having this discussion with some AFL guys last time I was in Australia where as a bike rider, we very rarely have home games like soccer, football. They like playing at home. They don't like playing away. Whereas as professional cyclists, we're almost nearly always away. So in my career, I had a mountain bike world championships in Australia, a road world championships in Australia, and Olympic Games. In 20 years of racing around the world. So I personally, I found it a bit strange. While I like to race in Australia and be home, I found it a bit different because 95% of my racing probably in my career of the international level races have been done overseas. So I found it a bit familiar yet unfamiliar. It was kind of strange. I think in the case of this World Championships, there's going to be it's the return of the international cycling coming back to Australia, and I'm thinking, like, I'm looking when you say home World Championships, and I'm thinking 2010 Bling won the under-23 road race in Geelong. He's going to be our guy in Wollongong. He's going to love to be racing at home. He's going to love being back, and he's going to be lifted by that.
Yeah, and he's from Canberra, so that's not too far from Wollongong. I mean, in the greater scheme of things. And I only got one big event in my career, Cadel. It was the 2006 Commonwealth Games, was the only really big international event I got to race at home. And I understand what you say, like it's so wonderful, but it's familiar, unfamiliar. It is a little bit strange having such an Aussie crowd. Now, before talking to you today, I thought, I know Cadel's the only Aussie to have ever won the World Championship jersey, but it just seems phenomenal that it took 90 years in the history of the event that started in 1927 for an Aussie to win. Since then, it took 83 years before we even got a medal, and that was with Robbie McEwen. But since your win in 2009, we've then gone on to win 5 more medals. I feel like there's a bit of a Cadel Evans effect going on here. But just tell me, what did it mean to you to cross the line in Mendrisio, which is almost a home world championships for you in Europe? What did that feel like?
I was very, very elated, to be honest. I think that's a good question. I'd have to say it was riding the last kilometre of that, probably I think it was 2.5 or 3, the top of the last climb to the finish. And I was solo and I had a bit of a gap. I didn't know how much of a gap I had though, because we had race radios then, but radios never work in the cities anyway, on the city circuits anyway. But I couldn't believe it was happening. Honestly, that was my feeling. I just couldn't believe I was there. I didn't know if I was in the middle of a dream or riding my bike. And that was probably the best way I could describe the feeling. And particularly that year was a real year for me of my trade team had lost complete faith in me because I was second at the Tour the year before. So they'd lost complete faith in me and already, and it wasn't like the Aussie team didn't back me very much for that race. And so I'm sort of, I suppose I'm just glad I kept backing myself because it was obviously I don't know if it was a pivotal point in my career, but it certainly is certainly a highlight of my career and really set things for the next few years thereafter.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing you chat about it. I remember watching, and from my perspective, it was the first time, Cadel, that I had remembered you being so aggressive and so tenacious in a race. And when you describe how the team had lost faith in you and perhaps even the Australian team, I feel as though you really had a point to prove because you rode out of your skin that day. It was a Cadel that we'd never seen. And it seems like that paved the way for then your victories to come after that.
No, I don't. I don't feel that way. I took the approach in the race, and like I'm just about to go and do some errands, and I'll probably drive across the finish line today. I've got to get some handlebar tape from the bike shop, among other things. But it's on the way. So like I know the roads, I know the area, I knew the worlds. But I was thinking about this for like 1 or 2 years, and it was always in my mind. It was going to be something I really focused on for the season, and that's why I went and rode the Vuelta that year. But I took the same approach, and but in the background behind all this, like I see the image you have there of me riding up the last climb. It's called La Terracha. I remember I was running 7.8 watts per kilogram, 53.16 or something, up this climb, which I can't ride the big chainring up. If you saw this climb, you'd never think anyone could. I was just having one of those moments of my career right at the right time. But behind that, between my team and the issues in the team, and I just had so much rubbish going on in my life. It was just ridiculous. And here I am, been trying to focus on this race for pretty much a year at least, to really do my best. And then all of a sudden the window of opportunity came, and it was that Kolobnev and Rodriguez were looking at each other, and they left a sort of metre gap, and I said, I wouldn't be doing that if I were you. And of course I gave it everything to the finish there. But it was just, I just had a period of probably since the 2008 tour until that race where not many people believed in me anymore, and so the opportunities just get less and less, and that's where when your team don't believe in you, they don't give you time to go away and train and prepare for the races, but go away and train and prepare for the races, but they still expect me to be on the podium at the tour, for example. These kind of expectations. I was just in this situation, which was wasn't the best moment of my career, but rainbow jerseys, to everyone who doesn't believe in me, well, here's a rainbow jersey.
Yeah, that's
what were you saying about what sort of shit rider am I? This is the insults you get from them. What happened to you? You're a good bike rider or whatever. It's like, here's a world title. Am I still a good bad rider or still a bad bike rider?
I can't think of a better kind of up you to the non-believers, Cadel, than doing that. I mean, if we take that...
it was pretty effective if I can say that.
Yes. Well, you mentioned Michael Matthews winning in Geelong before. The Aussie team's essentially been built around him for this course. There's a couple of elements to this. I want to ask you about Caleb Ewan's non-selection. But before that, I want to ask, do you think the Aussies are all in for Michael Matthews? Is that why they've built the team how they do? And what does that look like on race day to be all in for a leader like that?
If you want to win, you're going to be much better off being all in for one. That's for sure. And in Bling's case, I think that's a good choice. In regards to Caleb not coming or not being selected, I haven't ridden the Wollongong course. I trained in Wollongong, but last century, so I haven't ridden in the roads there for more than 20 years, so I don't remember them all very well. But I'm really, really interested to go and look at them. What I see on paper, and I was in Australia. I've only been back to Australia once since the Worlds were announced, so I didn't have the chance to go and have a good look at it as I would have liked to have. But a lot of the selections are really built around climbers, but I see on paper, what I see on paper for the Worlds is a race that looks harder on paper than it will actually be on race day. But like I said, I want to go and ride the course and see the climb. But it's not just like people look at the climb, but you have to look at the descents, the ability for a rider like Caleb to come back and rejoin the group, how many disposable teammates are teams like France or Italy or Australia going to have left to bring a sprinter back or break up the race to make a selection. And you have to look at all these things and evaluate them, not just look at, there's a hill in the race, or therefore a climber will win.
Yes, well, I mean, it starts from Helensburgh down over the Seacliff Bridge, and it's a beautiful start to the race, albeit down the hill. Mount Kira will hurt a few legs, but it's so early in the race, and it's certainly Mount Pleasant that throws a bit of a thing out. We chatted to Brad McGee about the selection because it was pretty contentious here in Australia. I've got to tell you, every man and his dog had an opinion. Now, Brad reckons, Cadel, he would have chosen Caleb just in case it was, like you say, harder on paper than it was in practice. Do you think they made the right decision by not considering a mass sprint or a big bunch sprint for the likes of someone like Caleb?
Oh, I'm guessing I hope they considered it very carefully, because if it comes down to a bunch sprint and we don't have someone there, or we don't have a guy who can come in, or there are pure sprinters there, obviously it's going to be a lot harder for someone like Bling to compete against those guys. I'm sure they thought long and hard about it in the past, years gone by. And so, like, I go back to Stewie came to Beijing with us in 2008 for the reason, in case it's a conservative race, in case a group can make it to the finish line, and that's that. And then in years gone by, we've taken someone with a faster finish in case that happens. One thing, actually, my first Pro World Championships was 2001 in Lisbon. And it was 4,000 something metres of climbing, and everyone was talking about how that's the same amount of climbing as a mountain stage of the Tour de France. But there was a bit of strange racing by the Italians in particular that year, because the course was so hard. All the teams rode quite conservatively. Okay, to go, I had Caleb Zabel's wheel. I got pushed off it pretty quickly.
They're similar size.
No. Erik's very short. Caleb's really pocket size. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but yeah. But then Oscar Freire won. I think Zabel was second, and but that's like that was a climbers course apparently, but that's just what happens at the Worlds, because it's a different race, different teams. It's at the end of the season. It's going to be a little bit different with the riders who raced in Canada, coming from Montreal. Some are coming from Europe, but they're all coming with not as much racing close by, so already there. The preparation by the riders is a bit different, but most of all, you're going in with national teams. Sometimes you go with, like, as Aussies especially, Italy, I have a habit of racing with the national team in a pro race before European Championships or something. Of course, for us being Australians, it's a bit more difficult to organise. But your guy at a race a week or two before was your teammate, was your competitor, or your competitor 2 weeks before is now your teammate and your main guy to help you win or something. It's really bizarre that. And so that whole dynamic has an effect on the way the races run as well.
Well, it's beautiful to see one of your small humans come in, Cadel.
Yes,
little gorgeous.
Little Blake's come to say hello to us today. Excuse me.
Well, hello, little Blake. I'm wondering, are you getting the handlebar tape for Blake's balance bike or for your own racer?
Hasn't worn it out yet.
I love that. Just hanging out with a family, Cadel. I think it's just fantastic what retirements look like for you. To touch on the strategy, a couple of years ago, a lot of the talk ahead of World Championships for the men's Spanish team in particular and the Dutch women's team was that they so often went in with a number of riders who should be able to pull off a victory, but somehow they stuffed it up and somehow they went away disappointed, and people were just scratching their heads at how can that happen when you've got so much talent in the team. Surely that is all about cohesion, exactly what you're talking about. So then I'll go back to last year, Cadel, where post-race, the Belgians had a little bit of a public fallout saying that Remco Evenepoel, who of course has just won the Vuelta, he wasn't all in for Team Belgium. He didn't do for Van Aert what he was supposed to do. A lot of criticism around it. Van Aert comes in as a favourite. Is Evenepoel going to do the job for him? Should he do the job for him?
Is Remco going to do the job? I ask the same things, and that's always been an issue. And sometimes it happens in a professional team, but I think it happens more in the trade teams, in the national teams, because, like I said, so Van der Poel was riding the Vuelta. He won that. Van Aert's in Canada. He ran second to Pogacar, which is interesting, going towards the Worlds. But then the Lotto Jumbo, Quick-Step, Jumbo's a Dutch team, Quick-Step's a Belgian team, Quick-Step's going to be closer to the national team. Do they like each other? Would Remco, what it comes down to mostly is a bit egos, and this is where it comes down to the individuals. And Van Aert doesn't come across this way at all. But in my mind, Van Aert's the guy to beat if you want to win there in Wollongong. Mm. Does Remco absolutely do anything to see Van Aert in a rainbow jersey? That's I don't know Remco personally, but that's I think it normally comes down to that. Oh, and no, that's just egos, real, right?
Yes.
And then then the politics is more the Lefebvre and the team and the national team, and Quick-Step's it's a Belgian team related to the. Not related to, but of course, Belgian Federation, Belgian national team, Belgian pro team, they're very close. Whereas, racing for Lotto Jumbo, Van Aert's done great. It's an incredible team. Obviously, it's working well for him. But yeah, of course, he goes there. He goes there as a Lotto Jumbo rider, surrounded by Quick-Step, Lotto Soudal teammates. And that'll be
a race within a race almost.
Yeah, but every team's the same in that, whether it's Spain, Australia, or England's slightly different because most of the riders are Ineos, so they're racing in Canada together as teammates in Ineos, but then they go. Some of the same riders are there, but they're teammates on the GB team. So for them, it works better.
Well, and they've got a few guys on the team who could make an impact. Fred Wright, I like to call him Right Said Fred. He's one of my favourites in the bunch at the moment. If he's on form, he's got a bit of tenacity and he's got a bit of cranky after Roglic's attempt to decredit him or accusation. But looking broadly at the favourites, the men's, I think you've mentioned the biggest names that people would look at. Is there anybody outside of Van Aert, Pogacar perhaps, maybe a Smoky with Right Said Fred Wright? Who else are we looking at in the men's race?
I think Right Said Fred, great. That's a great name. Right Said Fred's a good name. But when I first started looking close at the course a few months ago, I was thinking, a good Mads Pedersen could make this, and he wins 3 stages at the Vuelta, and then he's not coming. It's like, that's a bit disappointing.
It is. I don't think it'll be less of a competition. The women as well. Amanda Spratt's first ever World Championships was in Geelong. It feels quite fitting for her to be back. The women don't have nearly... It's okay, Blake is such a gorgeous little chicken. Certainly the women don't have quite as many climbs as the men have to challenge. But it's a similar kind of race and strategy that we'd be expecting, isn't it, for the women?
Yeah, and I think this is where I want to see, because the descent is really fast from the Mount Pleasant climb, correct?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And that's what I'm really interested in, how much it can rejoin after it splits on the climb. And then are we gonna? Is it going to be in the women's? Where it's not like we're going to have a thin field at the men's. Just there's some who we expect to be there that won't be there, which isn't normal. I don't know if that applies so much in the women's race. But then on the other side, like we don't have Valverde, but they take one more guy to work for someone else. Does that mean it's going to be more organised, or a more predictable race because the teams have more guys to sacrifice rather than going there with 2 or 3 leaders? And then is that going to apply to the women's as well, or is it going to be, because the women's, especially with a climb like this at the end, it's going to normally it's one on one normally in the final.
Yeah, great for the fans, maybe not great for the riders' legs at that stage in the race. Before you go and get your handlebar tape and make sure that Blake doesn't take all your folders out of the cupboard, I've had that happen to me. Cadel, very industrious little fella, is...
Please don't need any batteries here.
No batteries. We'll stay away from those. I just wanted to ask you before we go, Richie Porte has just retired. I just love your thoughts on that. He's had a sensational career, almost following in your footsteps. He came to BMC just after you'd hung it up. He nearly got to the top step of the Tour de France. He's certainly left a legacy in the sport, hasn't he?
Yeah, Richie, funny, I first met Richie, I think it was 2 days before the 2009 World Championships. He was reserved for the team, and Shane Bannon introduced us and said, Richie, and I can't remember, he was racing in a team in Italy, and ex-triathlete, he'd won, I can't remember how many races he'd won that year, but I was like, whoa, that's a lot. And that was my first impression of Richie, and then he went on to be such a solid. When he needs to do a good time trial, especially in the week-long stage races, Paris, Tour of Romandy, Catalonia, these races, he was really just incredible. And he did 1 year in there, made the second step of the podium in the Tour. He couldn't sort of keep it together for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, it was his sort of between him and being a regular podium contender at the Tour. Otherwise, he had all the ingredients necessary.
Well, he gave it a good crack.
I see these. Yeah, he certainly gave it a good go, and he was alongside Chris Froome and Brad Wiggins for all their top step of the podiums. But it's sort of the end of an era. I'm glad Jai's stepped up and taken the place, and now I suppose if Ben and Ben O'Connor and Jack can just avoid the mishaps in the Tour before it gets serious, they'll step in to fill Richie's place, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of talent in the pipeline, and another one to join us on the retirement bench, Cadel. It's getting pretty busy, I've got to say. But look, I look forward to catching up with you in Wollongong. Thanks so much for your time and for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. Excuse the little interruptions here.
Not at all.
No, thanks very much for having me. I can't wait to come out to Australia, of course, and the Worlds, and for everyone. I hope it's just a big kickstart again for international cycling back in Australia. And of course, we have the Worlds in September, Tour Down Under, and the Great Ocean Road Race in January. It's going to be a whole
You're back.
international
Your race
cycling
is back
in Australia.
Yes.
Yep. Our race is back. My race is back. Our race. All the races are back, and it's going to be an amazing Worlds. And I think it's going to be like you said before. As a rider, it's very hard to predict and plan your race and do strategy, so it's difficult. But for us as spectators on the sideline, we're going to have a very unpredictable and interesting, exciting race to watch.
Exactly. It'll be spectacular, Cadel. I know everybody's looking forward to seeing you. So we will see you in Wollongong. And thank you very much for joining us for this special edition of the Wheelhouse with Kate and almost Joel, who's out on the bike. And we'll see you soon.
See you, Kate. Thank you.